Welcome back to Living Local. If you're a coffee lover, it's important to know that where your brew comes from can have a significant impact on its taste and flavor. Joining me today is Courtney Walters, General Manager with Coffee Hound. Thanks so much for being here again, Courtney.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, I understand that coffee is not actually a bean. It's technically a fruit. Mind blown. Can you explain this?
So yeah, it's not a legume. It's actually the seed of the fruit of the coffee tree. And every seed has got two beans inside it.
Okay,
So, yeah.
I never knew that. And you did
Yeah.
bring some fresh coffee beans here.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how many people that drink coffee have never actually seen the coffee fruit before. I feel
Yeah.
like I should say a coffee fruit instead of coffee bean. But speaking of coffee and the wide variety of flavors, how is it similar to wine in the way that origin affects the taste and the flavor?
So it just like wine. I mean, that's a really good analogy. It doesn't just matter where it's grown. It also matters the variety that's grown. So if you're a wine drinker, you will understand that the different variety of the grape is similar to the different variety of the coffee and the flavor, but also where it's grown, the weather that it experiences, all that type of stuff will make a big impact in the final flavor.
Yeah, so I am a wine drinker and I knew all this stuff about wine, but I never knew that the same rules kind of apply to coffee as well.
Yes, yeah, well, and it also depends too a little bit on the roast and even on the species, because there's two main species of coffee that are cultivated. So.
All right, super interesting there. So what is a green coffee bean?
A green coffee bean actually has had a lot of processing done to get to that point, because you have to remove the fruit, you have to remove all the skins. If you ever eat peanuts that have the little skin on the outside, coffee is very similar. All that has to be removed before it's considered green coffee, and that's just a dried coffee that's very stable and won't it can be shipped and not lose a lot of flavor to it. And so that's what's imported and what roasters will receive, and then they do the roasting.
All right, I never knew that about green coffee beans. And how does roasting, the process of that, affect the taste and flavor?
So depending on the bean itself, the roaster has a lot of decisions to make. How dark to roast it and whether or not to blend it. So single origin coffees are sort of the pinnacle for a lot of coffee aficionados. You know, they want to taste that specific flavor of the coffee, just like wine drinkers want to taste the specific valley it was grown in. So the roast, if you go too dark on a roast, you're not going to taste the specific qualities of the coffee. You're going to taste the roast. And so you start to get kind of smoky flavors to it that override any sort of fruitiness or earthiness that the coffee is going to have in and of itself. So it's very, very important to get the roast right for a particular coffee so that all of the flavors are the best for it.
Okay, I never knew there was so much science behind coffee roasting. From roasting to brewing, how does the brewing method affect the taste?
So it'll bring out certain parts of the coffee again. So for example, you never want to use distilled water or reverse osmosis water, because it will take, all the minerals are taken out, and so it will have sort of a flat flavor underneath the coffee. But you do not want to use tap water, because it's going to have a lot of chlorine and other things in it that are going to affect the flavor of the coffee. So if you have filtered water that is not reverse osmosis, it's going to be the best. So that starting with just the water, then what the kind of filter that you use, whether or not it has a filter. So if you do a French press, it's just a screen, it's not a filter, and it'll leave some of the oils that are in the coffee in your drink. So all of that will bring out different parts of the coffee, better or less. It could make it taste a little bit more bitter, a little bit less bitter, a little bit more of a full mouth feel. So
very much like wine. This is so cool. Okay, so from the origin of the coffee fruit and from the roasting process and the brewing process. Okay, so we have this plethora of options for people, which can be a little overwhelming. What would you suggest to someone who is trying to maybe broaden their horizons, try different flavors, different roasts, different brews? Where do they even start?
So I would start with trying to get to drink coffee unsweetened and preferably without any cream in it, because then you're really going to be able to taste the coffee itself and not the things that you've put in the coffee. So that's not for everybody. You know, if you like your lattes, go for it, right? But if you really want to get into coffee, just try to drink it black and then decide what sort of roast you like first. So people who drink scotch, I've noticed, they really like that smoky flavor, so they're more likely, in my experience, to like dark roasts. They want that smoky, bold flavor. But if you can get to a medium or a light roast in a single origin, and then you can start to experiment with where you like coffees from. So personally, I prefer coffees from Africa rather than South America or Central America because I enjoy the flavor of them a little bit more. I won't go into the notes or anything like that because it's just a little too much, but I just find that I prefer that sort of flavor. And if I put cream or sugar in my coffee, I wouldn't be able to drink those.
Yeah, it kind of dilutes it.
Yeah,
you know, you don't get the true flavor of where it's coming from. So I guess would a barista be able to help someone that comes into Coffee Hound be able to decide where to start?
Yes, and you don't necessarily need to use any technical terms. So if you tell the barista, you know, like I like a strong or a popular term that's not really a technical term is bold flavored coffee. That's a dark. You like a dark roast, right? You probably like French roast. You like Italian roast, stuff like that. And so they should be able to kind of point you in that direction. And they should hopefully be able to describe the other single origin roasts well enough that you can decide, you're like, oh yes, I think a fruity one sounds good. For example, I've had some coffees that almost taste like blueberries.
Really?
Yeah, and so people will come back and say, I think you gave me a flavored coffee. I'm like, no, that's the coffee. It just kind of tastes like blueberries. So they should be able to tell you a little bit about the flavor that way so you know what to expect.
Well, it's nice that the baristas are there to be a guide for, you know, coffee amateurs like me over here. So that's really great. And speaking of Coffee Hound, you've been on here a few times, but remind us a little bit about the history and the background and where people can find Coffee Hound in the Quad Cities.
Sure. So we've been around since 1999. We now have 2 stores, both in Bettendorf, one on Devil's Glen and one out by the new Betplex. And so we...
you have a lot of offerings too.
Yeah.
I mean, just cold brew, hot brew,
we
lattes.
have all the traditional stuff. We even do the energy drinks now that are so popular. And so we just really enjoy connecting people with the type of coffee that they love. And we like to do it also quickly to get you on your way.
Like it.
Yes.
Fast, friendly, and efficient. All right, Courtney, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. If you'd like some more information, you go to qccoffeehound.com. You can also follow them on Instagram and Facebook. We'll have more details posted on ourquadcities.com. Stay with us. More Living Local is just ahead.